every good decision pays off. So I'm praying this broadcast today is your wake-up call to develop discipline like never before. After all, discipline is the bridge between your dreams and your destiny. So first, let's identify how to tell if you're wasting your life. Hey, I'm Terri Savelle, your cheerleader of dreams. I pray that as you invest in yourself today, you're captivated and you're catapulted to live your dreams. In fact, I want to help you today discover how to tell if you're wasting your life. And if you are, like I was for 11 years, how to get a simple morning routine. In fact, I'm going to share 5 morning habits of the most successful people in the world that will lead you to your dreams. You know, the truth is, your daily habits determine your destiny. In fact, I was listening to T.D. Jakes one day. I love the bishop. And he made this statement. He said, "What are you going to do with the rest of your life?" Then he said it like this: "What are you going to do with the life you have left?" Of course, he was shouting and sweating and stuff, and it sounded much more powerful. But what are you going to do with the rest of your life? Are you going to be like the 4 lepers who said, "Are we just going to sit here until we die? Or are we going to get up and go after what belongs to us?" You know, I wasted years of my life accomplishing very little, repeating the same scenario year after year. But I made a decision to take the first step in a positive direction by changing my morning habits. That was it. You know, I listened to the first message, I read the first chapter, I walked the first mile, and little by little, my mindset improved, my relationships strengthened, my dreams enlarged, my body reshaped. Every good decision pays off. So I'm praying this broadcast today is your wake-up call to develop discipline like never before. After all, discipline is the bridge between your dreams and your destiny. So first, let's identify how to tell if you're wasting your life. The first sign that you're wasting your life is number 1, you're comfortable. You know, they say when you stop growing, you start dying. Let me just ask you, how long has it been since you challenged yourself to learn something, to read, to grow, to try something new? See, being content is fine, but don't confuse it with settling for less because maybe you're too afraid or too lazy to go after what you really want. In fact, I read where Steve Jobs said, every single day, he would look himself in the mirror and ask this question: if today was the last day of my life, would I be happy with what I'm about to do? He said if the answer was no for too many days in a row, he knew he needed to make a change. Well, I was comfortable for 11 years. I drove the same route to work. I worked in the same office at the same desk doing the same tasks for a decade. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially if you love what you do. But my problem was I wasn't stretching myself out of my comfort zone. I wasn't committed to any kind of plan for personal growth. Well, because I was stagnant, everything in my life was stagnant. My savings account didn't grow, my relationships didn't grow, my life experiences didn't improve. See, when you stop growing, everything around you stops with it. In fact, in Genesis, you know, we see the story of Abraham and his father Terah, who set out for Canaan land. Now, that's defined as the land of abundance, the land of more than enough. Well, the Bible reports that they both set out for Canaan land. In other words, they both had every intention of making that their destination. However, Terah reportedly stopped along the way and settled in Haran. Now, think about the 2 words used to describe Terah: stopped and settled. He never made it to the land of abundance, dreams fulfilled, overflowing life because he stopped and settled. What I'm saying is don't let that be your story. You had every intention of writing that book, but you stopped along the way and settled. Or you had big goals to travel the world, but you stopped along the way and settled. You had great aspirations of having your own business, but you stopped along the way and settled. Never stop and settle when God has so much more for your life. So that's one sign that you're wasting your life. Number 2 is you've settled at a miserable job. You know, they say a typical 8-hour job makes up 1/3 of your daily life. Now, why would you invest so much of your precious time doing something you hate? See, we only get one shot to go full speed ahead at living the life God intended for us to live, and more importantly, fulfilling the assignment He's given us to fulfill. Well, unfortunately, 80% of Americans claim to be miserable in their careers. So, the third sign that you could be wasting your life, this one's kind of funny, is your television is your best friend. It's your BFF. Well, the average American is watching over 4 hours of TV every day. That's over 30 hours a week in front of a TV set, or as I like to say, watching other people live their dreams. Now, I don't want you to turn off the TV right now. Just hang on a second. Give me about 20 more minutes. But it is truly shocking when you deduct just 1 hour of TV time to do something productive. You are going to be amazed at what you can accomplish in just 60 minutes. You could clean a whole room, read a couple chapters, walk off a few hundred calories, become more fluent in a new language, learn a new lesson, brainstorm an idea that could change your life. I think you'll be as surprised as I was years ago to discover exactly how much time you're spending just watching TV. Now, I encourage you, track it this week. Because I think, you might be thinking, I'm spending a couple hours, each night as you unwind. But when you start tracking it, you discover it's closer to 5 hours per evening, which means 35 hours a week. Well, they say by the time you're 60 years old, that's 15 years of your life glued to a rectangle in the living room. Think about that. Remember, your time is your life. If you waste your time, you waste your life. Number 4, the fourth indicator you could be wasting your life is you make excuses. They say excuses are what we give ourselves when we don't want to admit that we are where we are because of our choices. In fact, I've heard someone say, if you really want something, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. Well, I love this story about Jim Rohn, how when he was struggling, he was a American guy, struggling, had pennies in his pocket, nothing in the bank, and this wealthy man said to him one day, he said, Jim, why haven't you done well up to now? What is your problem? Jim said, I pulled out my list of excuses, figuratively speaking, but I made a list. And he blamed everybody. He said, I blamed the taxes, the government, the economy, the president, lack of education, my boss. He said, I blamed everybody for where I was. Well, his mentor said to him, how come you ain't on the list? Because he said, if you want the future to change, you've got to change. He said, don't wish for less problems, wish for more skills. Well, Jim said that really woke him up, and he made a new list that said, me. Well, that change began by picking up one book, listening to one podcast, attending one conference, and that's exactly what Jim did. He changed his daily habits, and within 5 years' time, he became a millionaire. Well, good habits are as addictive as bad habits, but much more rewarding. The fifth sign that you could be wasting your life, number 5, is you relive the good old days. Do you often find yourself reliving the past? Do you feel like your best days are behind you? See, if you're still talking about yesterday, you haven't done much today. When you dwell on the past, you remain in the past. And this mindset can make you just lose sight of where God wants to take you. See, everything God has for you, it's ahead of you. It's not behind you. So yes, be grateful for whatever good memories you made and successes you acquired, but your greatest assignment is before you. In fact, there's a verse in Luke 17:32 that simply says 3 words. It says, remember Lot's wife. Remember Lot's wife. Now, God had promised to save Lot and his family from the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, but he gave them one command back in Genesis. He said, don't look back. Well, if you know the story, Lot's wife did the very thing God said don't do, and she turned back. Well, when she turned back, she gave the impression, I care more about my past than I do my future. And she lost her future by looking back. Well, you too can lose your future by looking back. See, when your memories are bigger than your dreams, it kills your today. And this is a serious issue. Are you spending more time rehearsing the past than you are planning for the future? Well, that's exactly where I was years ago. I was wasting my life with no vision, stuck in a rut. Each year was just a repeat of the year before. In fact, I think the dumbest thing I ever said, December 1991 in Lubbock, Texas, it was my college graduation day. I had my cap and gown on, and I turned to my family, and I think I said the dumbest thing I've ever said. I said, I will never study again. I mean, why would I? I had a degree. I graduated with honors. I was more educated than 70% of those who never finished college. I knew all I needed to know. It's good enough to last me forever. Well, ironically, that was proof of my uneducated intellect, right? That was probably the dumbest thing I've ever said, but what's worse, it became the dumbest commitment I ever kept. I literally backed up my dumb promise of never studying again for 11 years of my life. For more than a decade, I never picked up another book. I never listened to a motivational teaching other than church on Sunday. I never invested in a conference. I never gleaned from a mentor. I didn't listen to an audiobook or download a podcast. Nothing. I pretty much never studied again, and my life proved it. I lived paycheck to paycheck, paid my car note every month, paid my credit cards faithfully. I had nothing in my savings account. I spent everything I earned. My routine was I would wake up at the last minute to rush to the office and was the first to leave at 5 o'clock so I could hurry home and get enthralled in watching other people live their dreams. Who's going to get the rose ceremony tonight? Well, in 2002, when I finally got desperate for change, my husband and I had separated, and I needed hope, I needed vision, I needed motivation, I needed something to get up in the morning. Well, I picked up one book and started with one page, one day at a time. Something surprising began to happen. The more I read, the more I wanted to learn. I was learning how to manage my time, how to reduce my debt, how to lead an organization, get my body in shape, organize my house, how to set goals for my future. The more I learned, the more I began to earn. Well, as I began practicing 5 simple habits every morning, as a result, the next 11 years of my life, my income quadrupled, my cars were paid off. I went from ghostwriting books for other people to authoring books. I went from attending conferences to speaking at conferences. I went from watching TV for hours to hosting a TV show. What happened? As I began to grow, everything around me began to grow. My life has seen enormous increase in success due to the 5 simple habits I began one morning in 2002. And I know it can happen for you too, because I receive testimonies daily from people all over the world who are changing their routine and changing their lives. So when we come back, I want to share with you the 5 things successful people do before breakfast. I'll be right back.
5 things successful people do before 8 a.m. New from Terri Savelle Foy. If you feel like you're in a rut, repeating the same story year after year, this book will provide the strategies to lead you out. If you've got big dreams but don't know where to begin, this book will become a manual for what to do next. And if you've tried to start good habits only to fall back, this book will help you develop the discipline needed to break those patterns. Call or go online and discover how you can get the most of each day and live with purpose and passion. You'll also receive Terri's unique habits calendar. This one-of-a-kind resource will help you implement the 5 things successful people do so they can become powerful habits in your life. So don't delay. Call 800-795-5597 or visit us at terri.com to request your copy of 5 things successful people do before 8 a.m. along with the habits calendar while supplies last.
I'm so excited about my brand new book, 5 Things Successful People Do Before 8 a.m. Now, these are the very habits I started in 2002 that absolutely transformed my life. You know, anytime someone asks me, how did you overcome insecurity? How has your life changed so much? How did you start writing books? I always say, I changed my routine and it changed my whole life. You know, they say the secret of your future is hidden in your daily routine. You know, I heard one guy say, success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. In other words, it's not what you do each decade that matters. It's what you do at the dawn of each day that adds up. And successful people have a morning routine that they swear by. They protect it. They guard their morning rituals because they know the success they have is because of the routine they adapted. So you might be wondering, well, what are the 5 morning habits? Well, I want to run through them real quick today so that you have an idea and you can get started immediately. So number 1 is they pray and meditate. You know, I thought I was just making these up, but I began to find out that successful people do this in all walks of life. Well, my dad, Jerry Savelle, he taught me years ago to always take a journal and a pen into my quiet times with the Lord and to practice hearing the voice of God. The Bible says, my sheep know my voice. So God expects you to hear from him. It's not strange. It's not creepy. It's the opposite. It provides clarity, confidence, peace, direction, wisdom for your life. If you're wondering if you should change jobs, move locations, join a company, start a church, marry a certain person, go to this university, this is where you gain answers, is in your private time with the Lord. Now, I've actually never heard an audible voice in prayer. What you hear is more like an impression on the inside. And my dad taught me this. He said, whatever comes up in your spirit, just write it down. In fact, Jeremiah 30 verse 2 says, God said, write all the words I've spoken to you in a book. So God wants you to document what you hear in your spirit. And many times I've wondered, is that God or just my own head making this up? But I just started writing it down anyway. Well, this single practice of journaling my prayer time has provided more direction for my life than any other habit, no exaggeration. In fact, in my new book, I walk you through the steps of practicing hearing the voice of God. And if you choose to start your morning routine with only one single habit, this is the one that will alter the course of your life for the better in every way. There is strength in solitude. There's insight in isolation. Even if it's only 5 minutes a day, it matters. So the first habit is pray or meditate. The second habit is read. Successful people read a lot. For some reason, as I shared earlier, I had the mentality of viewing books as an obligation rather than an opportunity. It was always an assignment, something I had to do, not something I get to do. In fact, I thought only nerdy people who lacked a good social life were the ones staying home on a Friday night curled up with a boring novel. Well, I love what Bill Gates says. He says, be nice to nerds. Chances are you'll end up working for one. Well, without fail, every single successful person I have studied has this one trait in common. They read, and they read a lot. In fact, 75% of millionaires have reported to reading at least 2 books per month. So, unsuccessful people view growth as a period of life, as I did. Successful people view growth as a way of life. They never stop learning. Think about it. For example, if you desire to be a comedian, can you imagine getting to sit down with Steve Martin and learn everything you can about stand-up comedy? Well, you can. Steve tells it all in his autobiography. What about a dream to play tennis professionally? Why not be trained by Wimbledon winner and tennis Hall of Famer Andre Agassi by reading his autobiography? If you want to become a bodybuilder, Arnold Schwarzenegger has provided the equivalent of years of personal training in his book, what's it called, like the Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding? You can get out of debt with Dave Ramsey, learn to lead with John Maxwell. You could learn to play guitar with Keith Urban, tell better jokes with Jerry Seinfeld, learn to change your habits and live your dreams with Terri Savelle Foy. But I'm telling you, your life will change by a simple dose of reading every day. In fact, there's this quick story I want to tell. Back when we used to use cameras instead of our phones and we actually took our film to be developed, I would always stop and drop off my film at Walgreens. Well, I was there so much that as soon as I entered the sliding doors, I would hear, welcome back, Miss Foy. Well, one day I ran in the store to put another roll of film in, and the guy at the photo lab, he said, I noticed you went to Scotland. Of course, there was no privacy back then. They saw all your awkward poses and ones you would normally delete. And I said, yes, it's gorgeous. Have you been? He said, no, are you kidding me? He said, but that is the one place in the world I would love to go. So when he told me that, I said, well, when are you planning to go? He said, never. He said, I could never afford that. Not even a glimmer of possibility. I said, what? You can do anything you set your mind to. And then he said to me, no, I'm just not that lucky. He said, but my ancestors are Scottish, and I would give anything to go there like you did. Well, if you know anything about me, this is my specialty. I had a captive audience to teach the art of goal setting. So I started giving him tips to live his dreams. And he replied with, no, not me. Like I said, I'm just not that lucky. Now, unfortunately, all of my encouragement fell on deaf ears. He refused to dream. Well, recently, I was visiting my parents in their hometown where that Walgreens is located, and I ran inside to get some water. Well, up from the counter popped that same Scottish blood young man. And he said, Miss Foy, where have you been? I wanted to say, all over the world. But I explained that I had moved to a new city, and so I just said, I've missed you. Where have you been? He said, oh, just surviving. So I said, have you made it to Scotland yet? And of course I asked reluctantly. He said, no, that would be nice, but I'm just not that lucky. Truly, he was simply existing another year with no vision. Here he was, an American guy in his late 20s with opportunities all around him, and he remains bound to the same place doing the same thing year after year with no hope to ever change. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with working where he was working. I'm just saying he had no hope of doing anything. Now, at the same time, you have a similar situation of a young man from a poor family, devastated from the Great Depression in 1929, whose grandfather owned a local grocery store, making $2 per hour. Just a few decades later, he is raking in $20 billion in profit. Now, what did this young man, Warren Buffett, do that my Walgreens friend won't do? He simply read books. He opened his mind to possibilities. He expanded his imagination. He gained knowledge. He built his confidence. He gave himself permission to dream outside the four walls of that grocery store. I'll say it again. Successful people don't just read, they read a lot. In fact, Mr. Buffett, the fourth wealthiest man in the world, said, I've had some lucky days in my life. He said, but the luckiest day was in 1949 when I was 19 years old in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I picked up a copy of The Intelligent Investor. He said it not only changed my mindset, but it really changed my whole life. Then he said this, I would be a different person in a different place if I hadn't first seen that book. Now, I want you to really think about those words. A different person in a different place if he hadn't first picked up a book. See, the so-called luck that my friend is hoping for is available to him every day by picking up one book and starting with one page. So I want to challenge you, set goals for yourself to read, whether it's 20 minutes per day or 10 pages a day, a book per month or a book a week. Make it a priority and you will become a different person in a different place. Well, real quick, the third habit that I want to mention, I don't have time to go through all of them, is to write and review your dreams and goals. If there's one habit that I am known for more than anything, it's this one, the power of having a vision, writing it down, and keeping it before your eyes. I want to challenge you to do this because once I learned the secret to setting goals, getting laser focused on vision, and taking action, my life catapulted to new levels I never thought possible. This habit right here, grabbing a pen and paper, will absolutely change your life. I don't have time to go through all of it. The other thing I wanted to mention is that successful people exercise. Obviously, we know that. Well, I'm going to teach you in my new book, The 5 Things Successful People Do Before 8 in the morning. You don't have to do them all before 8. But I want you to learn the importance of taking care of your physical body. And it doesn't have to be a whole hour. I've gotten so many testimonies from people who took the advice that, I always say, don't look at the 1 hour you don't have, look at the 20 minutes you do have and get moving. Well, I have gotten so many testimonies from people who have lost significant amounts of weight just with a 20-minute walk every day, 20 minutes of riding a stationary bike, 20 minutes of walking around a track while their kids play soccer. I'm telling you, 20 minutes a day times 30 days in a month, that's 10 hours of investing in your physical health. So I wish I had time to teach more of this, but I'm so excited about my brand new book, 5 Things Successful People Do Before 8 a.m. It has proven habits that will advance your life to a whole new level. Now, I speak from experience, what God has done in my life, and from thousands of testimonies we receive. From entrepreneurs to authors, celebrities, ministers, nearly 100% will attribute their success to the daily disciplines they've adapted in their lives. I'm telling you, the most successful people in the world have a morning routine. So if God is dealing with you specifically about discipline, developing more self-discipline in your life, you need to get this new book because I will walk you through my personal daily routine of 5 things that I started doing each morning when my life was at the lowest and how it transformed me into a person of self-discipline. And today, I still practice those 5 habits all before breakfast. The secret of your future is in your daily routine. Now, you're going to learn things like what I call the secret to self-motivation, because that's one of the things people have asked me. Terri, how have you stayed motivated all these years? Because it's one thing to get excited, but how do you keep it? You are going to conquer procrastination. You're going to say goodbye to laziness, lack of energy. In fact, I'm going to show you why successful people spend time alone. how to practice hearing the voice of God. You're going to get crystal clear on God's plan for your life. And you're going to learn so many practical things like how to retrain your mind for success, how to turn your drive time into an opportunity to prepare for greatness. You're actually going to look forward to traffic jams, I'm telling you, because you're going to learn to invest in yourself. Because when you're growing, you're learning, you're preparing for your next level. And as you start to grow, everything around you will start to grow. Now, my favorite chapter is how to set and achieve any goal you have in life. You're going to love the stories of people just like you and how they went after their dreams and goals of writing books, losing weight, paying off debt, starting businesses. You're going to learn all that. But I'm so excited we added this to it. It is a custom-made habits calendar. Now, I didn't have this fancy thing when I was starting out, but this is a proven key to self-motivation. This will become your personal checklist. And now, let me just say, it doesn't have the months already assigned. You get to start whenever you want. But I've got the 5 habits already in here for you to just check them off every day. And I'm telling you, when you see your progress, it motivates you to keep going. So, this is our first time to offer these 2 new resources together at this special price. It's simple to order. Just pick up the phone right now, call the number, or go online to get it sent out today. And let me just tell you, what you do behind the scenes has more significance than what you do in front of people. It's all part of the preparation for where God wants to take you. So I believe this will become a manual for preparing you for your dreams. And let me close out by saying, don't look at all the years you've lost. Let's look at the years you've got left and start living your dreams. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.
5 things successful people do before 8 a.m. New from Terri Savelle Foy. If you feel like you're in a rut, repeating the same story year after year, this book will provide the strategies to lead you out. If you've got big dreams but don't know where to begin, this book will become a manual for what to do next. And if you've tried to start good habits only to fall back, this book will help you develop the discipline needed to break those patterns. Call or go online and discover how you can get the most of each day and live with purpose and passion. You'll also receive Terri's unique habits calendar. This one-of-a-kind resource will help you implement the 5 things successful people do so they can become powerful habits in your life. So don't delay. Call 800-795-5597 or visit us at terri.com to request your copy of 5 things successful people do before 8 a.m. along with the habits calendar while supplies last. If you're serious about going to the next level in your life, ministry, or business, make plans now to join Terri for 2 inspiring days of training and growth at the Next Conference 2019. Terri's guests include Chris Brown, development expert with over 20 years of effective business and church ministry leadership. Gigi Butler, founder of Gigi's Cupcakes, the largest cupcake franchise in America. Seating is limited and will sell out, so register today at terri.com/next.